Okay, as I say, we're standing in the middle of my studio in the middle of Angus, and this is linoleum, and you might wonder what connection that the middle of Angus has with somewhere like Kirkcaldy or something like that, but linoleum is made in Kirkcaldy and I use it to make pictures with. I cut them into blocks. It's called relief printing, which sounds quite frightening, but it isn't. It just means you cut away bits to leave bits sticking up to make pictures with. Linoleum has been made for about 100, if not 150 years, and it's been used to make pictures for most of that length of time. Prior to that, what was basically wood blocks were very, very expensive because they had to be made with end grain wood, so you weren't, when you cut across the block, you weren't impeded by the grain in the wood. And then people discovered that they could do just about exactly the same thing with a lump of lino, and it was much cheaper. That's the biggest one that I've ever done. But I mean, twice that size would cost you something like £100. So compared to a very large piece of lino like that, there is absolutely no competition. The tools that you use to cut the lino are quite different from the ones that you'd use for wood engraving. Like, this is a wood engraving on this piece of wood, and these are wood engraving tools, which rejoice in very fancy names like spit stickers and bull stickers. See, this is a wood engraving tool, which is totally different from an open-ended lino cutting tool like that. But what they're basically doing is they're doing exactly the same thing, is they're taking out a white mark. That's what you're doing with them. But with this, it's not the same amount of pressure, and you're doing it awfully, awfully carefully, and it can take hours. Wood engraving is a fantastically relaxing thing to do if you've got the time and the patience. Where with these, you cut much easier and much quicker. What I'm basically doing here is I'm just opening up this line. If you look at the print there, you know how posts go very green in winter, and you're very conscious of the fact that they are very green, because that's where most of the green comes in winter, is from pieces of wood and things like that, which are very, very green. And what I'm doing here is I'm just opening that up a wee bit to let more of that colour through for when I put the next colour on. You always keep your hand behind the tool, and you do like that, because if you put your hand in front of there, you can open a vein quite easily. And I have done this, and my best trick was putting one of these up my wrist. There was a lot of blood at the time. And but this is, and if you do bleed, you try not to get it on the block or on the print. You know, when you're teaching this, you say, if you do hack a large lump out of yourself, please don't get it on the artwork. Not unless in later years they want to test it for genetic sort of stuff, and then they can prove you did it if you haven't signed it, you know. Anyway, so back to the lino cut. Now, the one that I have here, which I started about a week ago, has about 8 colours on it. And if you have a look at it here, you can see it's still at a quite pale stage. The way I work is almost, if you've ever done watercolour painting, you will understand that you layer colour one on top of the other to achieve your final result. And the colour always comes up through it because the paint is translucent and transparent. Well, it's the same with lino inks. They are translucent and transparent. And what I do is I start with the palest colours and work up through the darker ones, cutting the colours away as I've finished using them. Which means, if you look here, the sheep has vanished. Sheep has gone. Sheep is on the print, but sheep is no longer with us on the block. It has gone. It was around the floor in bits, and I hoovered it up with a Dyson yesterday. Anyway, so when I start off a lino cut, I just have more or less a plain bit of lino like that. That's just in a picture size. But this is just a plain piece of lino. And what I will do is I will draw on this, mostly with a pen which won't come off. I mean, either one of these will work, or some biros don't come off either. And you can just draw on it. Then I would start to cut it away. There's one here, just a wee silly thing. This is one of my really silly hens. And what I would do is, as you can see, this has been drawn up with just a drawing on it. Now what I want is just this. what I want is this image here of the hen sitting up proud. So what I would do is I would just cut away from it. What you do is you use the V tool first to cut the line, and then you clear back from the line. Again, if you can, always work away from yourself, because it saves elastoplast in vast quantities. As you can see, it goes all over the floor, and I mean, I make the mess, so I clean it up. The U-Bank is very handy for this. Anyway, so what I would do is, as you can see, I would cut all this away to leave that figure standing proud. Then I would cut whatever I wanted white, because I would be printing on white paper. And as with watercolour, where you can't paint a white, you rarely print a white, because printing white never really usually works, because it's not like a screen print. The white is not opaque, so you never get a pure, you'd never get a pure and startling white. So you usually always work on white paper if you're doing a multicoloured print like that. So the first thing that you'd come back into this would be the actual white. So say if I wanted hen's hair, the flower in her hair, white, I would cut that out before I put ink on it. When I had that all cut out, I would take it across to the ink slab I have across there, and I would ink it up in what would be the first colour. The first colour is your first shift off the white, and then you just work from there. The inks I use are oil-based inks. You can use water-based inks. I've never liked them. The only advantage about them is that they wash off as opposed to wearing off. They come beautifully pristine when they come from the person you buy them from. They're beautiful, they're like that. And then after I've had them for some time, they end up in that mess that you see there. I use them in conjunction with reducing medium, which is this stuff here. Now, reducing medium is exactly the same as when you paint in watercolour and you want a paler colour in watercolour, you will add more water. And this works in that it makes the colour clearer and more transparent and lighter without making it opaque. This is what reducing medium is, and it's basically just white like that. It can be called reducing medium, transparent white. There's various other things that they call it, but it's basically all the same stuff, and I use that. And this is why I can get the pale colours, because if you're going for a one-off print, you will use pure colour. But if you want it coming up through the sort of tones and shades the way I do it, you reduce the colour, so you will get a very pale version of that colour. The other thing you have to remember, which is totally different from painting or drawing with this form of printing, is it's very difficult to teach somebody who's very used to using a pencil and making a mark, going mark, 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 to say, you're now going to use this and cut with this. And what they automatically think when they start doing it is that when they cut a line like that, that is the line that's going to be important. When in fact, the line that is going to be important is the bit that you leave sticking up, not the mark you make with that. And when people do that, I call them white worms. And when I see they're cutting white worms, I usually stop them and tell them to think, no, well, I print it for them, and then they see. They say, it's not the white bits, it's what you're leaving in that counts, not what you're whacking out. And it's a funny thing, because I've taught this to children of a comparatively young age, like we're talking about 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds. Now, they automatically will cut a black line, because they're not so used to writing with a pencil and doing things like that and putting the mark in. They automatically understand. Basically what I would do if I was going to print something is I would have the ink here, mixed up here, and I'd basically just put it down on the slab like that. These are the rollers here. Now, these are soft polyurethane rollers. They're not hard. You get hard rollers and soft rollers. That is about the amount of ink that you'd need if you were wanting to put that on a block. This is a reduced ink, so this would be a very pale green. When you're wanting to test a colour, put your finger in the ink and spread it. And then you see what the ink is going to come out like. Not like it is in that lump there, which means it looks much darker, but that is more or less the colour that it would print up. So when you've got it like that, what you would do is you just take a block like that. Oh, you fancy a small green cat? Oh well, let's go for it. This is a small cat. You just ink your block like that. Actually, if I was printing this, I would use a more opaque ink, but this is just to show you the basic thing. And so that is your block, especially for people who are sort of, well, they possibly see pink elephants as well. But you can have your cat any colour you like. I mean, you could have an orange cat, you could have whatever. This is the joy of printmaking. Once you've cut the block, you can ink it up in any colour you like. Put spots on it as well if you wanted. All over your cat. It'd be better if it worked in red. But you can have a green cat with pink spots. And so what I would do then is I would take this across and put it on the press and print it. And on a piece of white paper, that would come out, a green cat with pink bits on it. I have other ones which are printed on wonderful, interesting papers like that. This is Japanese kozo paper, and this has papyrus leaves in it and things like that. I do not personally put the papyrus leaves in it. An awful small person in the handmade paper company does that. I have a friend who actually makes paper, and she gave me some bits to play with, and I mean that's a bit she made with very small guinea fowl on it. Because she said she wanted guinea fowl, so I did that for her, and she will get it later. People think that this method can be actually very crude, but like any method, when you learn a method, this is as crude as you want it to be, or as fine as you want it to be. All it takes is time. I didn't really mean to be an artist. What I was going to do was to go to university and do English and history. But a guy I was at school with wanted to go and sit the entrance exam for Dundee Art College, and he said, "Oh, Babs, you're going to come with me and sit it with me, because I don't want to go by myself." So I did, and I ended up going to Dundee Art College because the acceptance for Dundee Art College came first. And I remember being very quiet about the fact that in first year I was sitting there with 5 hires. It was a thing you basically kept quite quiet about, was having 5 hires. I did get a C in higher art. I hope that cheers people up a bit. The number of prints I do decides when I get bored or when my little arms get tired. And 16's a nice number. Once you've pulled that press 16 times, you feel as if you've justified your existence for the rest of the day. And what I'll do is I'll just go on and print the rest of them straight through the edition. And then when I've finished, I'll interleave them with sheets of newsprint and put them back through the press under pressure, and this is called stripping. It's not the exciting bit. Now, this is the print before I actually put the next colour on it. You can see it's still quite pale. When I put this colour on it, you'll see it change. Now this is just winding in the bed of the press. Take it into there. One goes up, that one comes down. Now, see how that has changed in colour?